Morning, everyone. I'm Sudeepthi, working as an associate professor from the Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. I'm here today to talk about an interesting concept, and the concept is something like: do you really gain confidence through speaking skills? One must be wondering, how can we gain confidence through speaking skills and also overcoming fears? So, if we have to gain confidence, we will have to overcome our fears. So, overcoming fears is something that you need to work out in order to be a successful communicator. Especially, you communicate everywhere, and you don't have to be a language expert in order to communicate effectively. You can communicate anywhere for anything. So, in order to gain success and also to establish a successful and fruitful relationship or production, or a sort of any fruitful gain, or any success or victory, or any profit, that whatever is that like really you have aimed for, can be achieved through your communication. And now when I say that you can communicate everywhere, anywhere, for anything, so what do I mean by that? I mean by saying that, like, you will have to communicate whether you're a peon, or whether you're a big administrator, or whether you're a big a very great successful man, or a big teacher, or you're a vendor, fruit vendor, or you're just a salesperson, or you're a principal, or you are a, I mean, whatever department you are in, or whether you're working as a clerk, or you're working as a chief coordinator, or whatever role you take it, name it, and you will have to establish a proper, and you have to balance a very good relationship with the person you are in contact with. So, what am I trying to underline here? I want to underline the importance, and I want to highlight the importance of speaking skills, but not to undermine the importance of communication skills. Right. So now, I have in my presentation I have so many things to share with you. So one part would be on focusing entirely on successful communication ship, especially for language learners, or language users, or communicators, or whoever it is. And in another part, I would like to focus on the useful strategies, or tips, or stratagem, or name it whatever I'm here to help you with all these strategies, or tips, or essential traits, or useful mechanics, or procedure, or tips. So, like I named it earlier, like I'm here to provide all those essential characteristics, so that you will try to maintain these essential traits when you are communicating with your pals informally, and with your boss formally, or with your colleagues formally. So, you will have to imbibe this kind of speaking culture when you're communicating, especially in the English language. Right. So, I titled my topic as gaining confidence and overcoming fears through speaking skills. So, many students, or many speakers of English language, so many speakers, they, when I do communicate with them, they come up with so many inhibitions, or like so many fears. They say that, madam, we are unable to communicate, and the reason is they lack confidence. And if they lack confidence, do they really fail in establishing a successful, or a wonderful, or an impactful impression on the minds of the listeners? Yes, they do. And in case you lack confidence, obviously, what happens actually? So, fears will overcome. They will overcome you. Instead of you overcoming your fears, they will undermine you, and they will overpower you also. So, overpower, or they will overlap you, or it's just like they will, they constrain, or they restrain, you from doing a successful piece of like information, whatever you are trying to inform them. So they will obstruct, or they will stand as stumbling blocks in your communications. So for that reason, you should be mindful of these different strategies, and also some problems really you make with a language, or like, especially when you use language skills, you lack all these things, you lack all these strategies, and thereby what you do is you make many errors, language errors, and errors, not only language errors, but also at the same time you make many attitudinal kind of errors. So I do not name them as attitudinal errors, but then you will have to set right your attitude or your perspective towards that particular kind of concept, or the your perspective towards that particular target should really should really make an impact on that. So if you lack confidence, or if you lack proper intelligence, or if you lack proper efficiency, or if you lack confidence, if you lack proper boldness, definitely they will overpower you, definitely. So for that reason, you will have to gain confidence, and you will have to overcome your fears. So gaining confidence will have a direct impact on having a successful impact on the minds of your target learners. At the same time, eventually what happens is you'll be able to overcome your fears. So now these two concepts are there: gain confidence and overcoming fears. And then these are linked up with, one typical, what do I mean by that word typical? A common, what is it, like a very day-to-day useful, and which we do chit chat, okay, informally we say. But what I would like to say is, I would like to name it as speaking skills in a formal conversation, or in a formal context. What I would say is, it is through speaking skills you'll be able to establish a very good relationship, or you can really make a mark on the minds of the readers, or you can really make a mark in your career, or you can really invite, and you can really progress or success. You can show forth your success in your respectful, or in your different curriculum, or in your respective professions that you are into. So that is why I'm here today with all these things, concepts, and with all these strategies to help you with. And like I've mentioned it earlier, I have a few what's like points to say for the learners who are preparing for competitive exams, especially IELTS, or especially for your campus placements, and what are the problems, and what are the questions they really come up with, and what are the points you will have to remember, and what are the concepts you will have to speak about. And for example, what are the topics that you will be given, for instance, if they are given. So what do you have to do? So I'm here to take you through all the slides, and to give you glimpses into these strategies, and into this glimpses into this information. Right? Let me begin my concept with a slide. Like, for examples, if you have to face your boss, or if you're facing a person who is interviewing you, so the interviewer can come up with, or the examiner will ask you a few questions like this, like could be on 2 or 3 topics, like could be like, it varies. For example, if you are preparing for IELTS exams, so they will come up with a very interesting they'll come up with a very interesting question, and that will not at all be a different question. Please note it, what I'm trying to say. So they don't come up with a different question, but they will come up with an interesting question. So it could be, is that a very common topic? Yes, it is. They do come up with a general topic, where students or learners or English speakers lack communicating in in day-to-day conversations. But is that a day-to-day conversation? No, it's not a day-to-day conversation, but it is a formal conversation. But is that a common topic? Yes, it is a common topic. Is that a general question? Yes, of course, it's a general question. So you will have to come up with very common answers. At the same time, you have to be mindful of the vocabulary you use. So while we are doing it, okay, while you are listening to my lecture, please pay attention and see to that you follow different methods or strategies, or also the kind of vocabulary you choose. And and it's a way of articulating. So that's all. And like science or like experiment or any experiment, you will have to do it. You have a stepwise procedure to do it. Okay, so you need so many utensils, or you need so many vessels, or if you have to conduct any operation. Okay, so or if you cook some interesting curry, you need so many vessels. Okay, so if you're cooking something very different or a very tasty recipe, so you need many ingredients. But in English language, or when you are communicating English, you don't have to go for too many resources, especially, or too many methods. But then it is so plain and it is so simple that you will have to require all that you need is your speaking skills. So part of that, let me narrow down that for you. So your vocabulary, your sentence formation or sentence construction, and the concept, the link up, the coherence and the cohesion of the topic that you are speaking. So this cohesion and coherence should fall in the same, should fall properly, and it should be, the sentence or the concept, what you are coming up with, should have these two, coherence and cohesion. So when I use these two words, so what do I mean by that? So coherence and cohesion both mean the link, proper linking of the ideas. Okay, so there should be a link between the paragraphs or the points or the words that you're speaking. For example, in the first paragraph, I speak about apple. Okay, so it's just an instance. So when I speak about an apple, and in the second paragraph, if I speak about a mango, so do you find any link? No, there is no link. So what is a connection? So there is no connection. So that is a common failure that we do notice in our day-to-day conversation. So before the kind of introduction I'm trying to give you is to make you understand the problems that occur during our conversation. Just like we often meet our colleague, or we often meet our boss, or we often meet our attender, name it, anyone. We always try to understand what they're trying to say, because they start with some topic and they end with another thing. It's just like, previously they talked about apple, and then they will continue with mango. So any difference? Yes, there is a difference. But can you really link up with it? No. You can relate to other fruits, but then you cannot show a direct connection between these two. So in the same way, in the same way, or in the same tone, what they say is there is no connection. Obviously, no connection. So that kind of coherence and logical connectivity. Okay, so that kind of logical progression should be there. So that's what I mean by cohesion and coherence. So you will have to have that kind of range, grammatical range, vocabulary range, lexical range for that matter, and all the types of words or vocabulary you use. So these are very simple in English language. As long as you are a confident speaker, you will have all this in your, on your tip of your fingers, like vocabulary to use and the concept to speak about. So at the same time, content is very important. At the same time, your vocabulary or language matter is very important. So both are very important. So that's the point I'm trying to reiterate. Right. Now, coming back to our slide, the examiner will ask you a few questions on 2 or 3 topics, for example, and you may be asked to talk about your family, food, school, work, neighborhood, or your hometown, or any other similar topics. So you must be wondering, ma'am, these are very common. Yes, you're right. These are very common topics. But do you really find it very interesting? Yes, you can find it very interesting. But are these boring? No. Are these challenging? Yes, I do. I say that these are very challenging. You lack vocabulary for talking about it, and especially when I expose, like when I had to interview other students, or when I had to talk to others about a basic questions like, "Tell me about your neighborhood," and that student or the listener did not understand neighborhood, so lack of vocabulary, and it is just a common general topic. And where lies the problem? Vocabulary is the problem. So this is very typical. At the same time, it's very challenging. So that is why I just, I'm here to help you with the basics and or very fundamentals of English language, which act as pillars when you communicate or articulate with your listeners. So the strategy one. So if you have to speak about these topics, food or school or work or neighborhood or your hometown, you can talk about all these topics. So what's the strategy? Strategy one could be like knowing the vocabulary to talk about yourself and everyday situations. Likewise, like if you have to attend your IELTS exam, or if the IELTS examiner has to ask you questions, a set of questions, like the very simple questions. He might, ask you, like, just talk about yourself, and then we get ready for difficult concepts. Like if I have to speak about kind of English language, the global significance of it, and the usage of it, and the importance and the relevance of the English language. So we worry a lot, and we prepare a lot, talking about all that and thinking about all that, brooding over all difficult and challenging topics. But if they ask you to speak about yourself, so what is your role and what is your stance, and how is that you're really, how do you really withstand this kind of challenge? So that is why you should be able to speak about yourself. And there are so many YouTube videos that say you have to introduce yourself like that. But then, it's like you should know a standard way of talking about it. What kind of sentences or what kind of vocabulary these examiners expect from the the participants or the users of the English language. So that is something very important. So the strategy that I'm trying to say is you have to know the vocabulary to talk about yourself and everyday situations. And then don't give short answers. Don't give short answers. Give one or two sentences at least. For example, if you say, "How was your day?" "Yeah, good." "Yeah, good" is very informal. And just if you want to say, for example, "What's your name?" "Yeah, I'm so and so." "And how was your trip?" Okay, or "How was your day?" Or are you really facing any problem right now in your work culture? Or do you really have any problem with so and so? You just say yeah, no. So these are very informal. You have to avoid these sentences. So when I say, "How was your day?" you can say, "Yes, it was good." And in fact, I wanted to, in fact, I noticed quite a few interesting things. And importantly, I observed that a major incident had happened in our workplace, or it could be any place. And what was that major incident? So you don't have to speak in so many chunks. You can speak in chunks. Could be one, or at least limit your answers to at least one or two sentences. But don't say, the common mistake is like, "Good." How was your day?" "Bad." "How was your mother yesterday? She was not well. How was she feeling yesterday when she attended the party?" "Okay." What is this answer? Okay is not the answer. You will have to say that how was the day and how did she really feel, and had she experienced could she really enjoy, or she enjoyed so many she relished, or so many events yesterday that happened in the party. So you can come up with very interesting sentences. The reason why the speaker, or the reason why this person, the user, or the one who is speaking there appeared for the IELTS exam, the person or the student will lack confidence. No, he lacks confidence, and because of this confidence, or because of this no confidence, or because he doesn't or she doesn't have confidence, obviously it will come down to one or two words, not sentences. So point. So that is why you will have to uh, gain your confidence. Coming back to my title, gaining confidence and overcoming fears through speaking skills. And then you have to talk about nouns. You should be able to use nouns and adjectives for each of the topics, and that will be very helpful. So you should know interesting adjectives and interesting nouns. You can really come up with all those things. So that's the point I'm trying to say. And now let me take you through the slide. Okay, so have a look at this. Have a look at the slide. The slide, or the concept, or the question is titled like this: Tell me something about your family. Tell me something about your family. So this is a common question. So you can say, can you please fill? I have an immediate family, or conjugal family, whatever it is like. So what are the words, or what are the words really, vocabulary you use it when you have to talk about your family? There is my mother and father. Plus, I have two. You can see a blank over there, and I have for you to use. This is just this is some food for your thought. So that's the reason I've left blank, without filling those blanks with answers. But then you can continue to say that just me and my mother, and also, but my relatives and aunts they live nearby, so we seem like a dash family. So fill up with this with the words or vocabulary you require that are required. And also, I have a dash brother. He is my so and so sibling. So ours is a so blah 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 family. No, you cannot leave the space like that. You will have to fill those spaces or blanks with appropriate vocabulary. Most of our relatives live in another city, so we don't see them often. We don't see them often. We have some cousins, which cousins, who live near us, but I don't know them well. Now, you can come up with a very interesting vocabulary, dear audience. So, you have to know it. So, especially, so what are the problems? So, there are some points ahead for you to think. So, when you talk about your household. Now, these are some important questions, and these are some important points that you need to remember. What are they? Now, point number one: while you're describing a member of your family, be clear in describing the role played by that particular member in your household. So you have to describe a member of your family. So when you are describing him, what do you say? Do you really talk about his hair, or do you really talk about how your father's eyes are? No, I'm not talking about those details. But you have to give a very cut, crystal clear description about the member of your family. So you have to be very clear in describing the role played by that particular member. So you have to talk about that person, and you have to talk about the role played by that particular person. So what is the role? He's the head of the family. He's a husband, or he's a father of two children. And what's the occupation he does, and he does so and so. So you need to be very descriptive and analytical. So you must be thinking, madam, you're talking, it's not science, or it's not mathematics that you analyze or you see through a problem. But here you're mistaken. You have to think about your speaking, or your paragraph, or your answer, or your responses, and see to that they're descriptive and analytical. They should be descriptive and analytical. What do I mean by that? So you should describe them, and you have to describe what? You have to describe their role in the family, and you have to describe the major occupation, or the interesting or very, very popular work that he does or she does. And you can read, for example, if I have to talk about my mother, and she's a working woman, I would say that she works so and so company, and she, what's so special about her. And you can really highlight the role played by my mother or her mother in the family. And you can say that, for instance, let me say like this, like she works outside, and then she comes home, and then she does major part of our whole household chores or work, whatever it is. So you highlight the responsibility of that particular candidate you are talking about in your family. And then you have to be very analytical also. You have to analyze the kind of the kind of description, and the kind of points, or the kind of description, or the kind of the points that you have really coming up with. You have to analyze what to speak also. And also you have to talk about the person's interest also. So for example, if you are very much, if you are talking about your family member, and you have to talk about that person's interest and hobbies, this is a very common question. So that is the reason all the participants, for example, in any company, or for that matter any participant for that particular session, directly if we ask, can you please talk about yourself, and directly talks about his family, and he says that he starts with his hobbies or interests. So that's a mistake. You have to start with the kind of role and responsibility of that particular person in the family, and then talk about their interests, their hobbies, and their likes, dislikes. And then another important point is, like, keep your description grounded to reality rather than just spluttering a set of irrelevant adjectives. So you cannot just throw, or you cannot just splutter a set of irrelevant adjectives just because you're describing them. You have to make sure that you project them, or you have to talk about them very realistically, instead of saying very kind of like a kind of like coming up with very fancy type stories, or instead of coming up with fabricated stories, and instead of coming up with cooked stories that by adding all spices to it, and one could really make out when you are adding that sort of stuff. So you have to be mindful of that. So the kind of vocabulary you need to use it. So coming back to the question, I have a dash, okay, I have a family. So here you can fill up your answers with these words. Like you can say, I have a nuclear family, or you can also say the synonyms for that could be like conjugal, or elementary family, or immediate family. So what do you mean by that? It's just like parents staying with their children, just husband and wife, mother and father, and their children. So that is just that itself can be shown or talked about as a nuclear, or immediate, or conjugal, or elementary family. Also you can say extended family, in reverse of that. So extended family, I mean, like you have all your relatives, or your grandparents, or you have joint family. You can also come up with words like that. So close knit family. Okay, so somebody who are very they are very close to, like you are a family. Close knit family means like you stay together physically, mentally, and you have lot of sharing, lot of bondage, okay, emotions, love. So you can come up with vocabulary like that. And also you can use vocabulary like you have how many offsprings, you made children, and then and some other words related to it, like you have a spitting image. That means a replica of your father, like you resemble your father, you resemble your mother. And so you can say, you can also not obviously you talk about sibling rivalry, but you can bring a positive connotation, saying that we have a sibling we don't have a sibling rivalry between us. So you can make use of very good words when you are speaking. And words like adopt, adapt, adept. So don't have to get confused with these words. I'll give you the explanation too. But then, like, one has to be very comfortable with using these words. And you can also use words like hereditary, dysfunctional family. So dysfunctional family is like, you see children who are not very disciplined, and they're mentally, they're not mentally retarded children, but behavioral problems. So you can also use words like ancestors, household, upbringing, spoiled child, authoritarian. Authoritarian. Who is the authoritarian in family? Your father is authoritarian. You can say my father is an authoritarian, or he maintains many issues, like he's the authoritarian one. If you're talking about your family, you can say he's the authoritarian. Or if you're talking about like some ex, you say he's an authoritarian in some other field, for example. So you can come up with all these things. So the words like adapt, adapt. For example, what do you mean by this word adapt? They could not adapt to the new climate, and so perish. Okay, adapt, that means not suitable. That means like you could not adjust. So it is different from adapt or adopt. Adapt means, although, for example, let me give you an example so that you will understand the meaning in the context. Although Stephanie seems to have a hard time in science, she's adept at solving equations. She's adept means very skillful, good at doing something. Okay, adopt, like you bring a child and grow the child as your own child. Okay, so a friend of mine recently adopted a baby girl who was left on the streets of aging. So you can also use words like single parent, adolescent, and it's like she's saying like where your father or mother, they are not there, and so they bring their own children, having no father, or like only a single mother. So you can use words like she's a single parent. Okay, adolescent. Okay, where a child grows from the childhood to the adulthood. And also you can say my father is a breadwinner, and you can use all the words like. And similarly, if you have, and there will be another question also similar, especially for your IELTS and for other competitive exams, like spending time with your family or with your friends. So do you prefer spending time with your family or with your friends? You can use some words like this. So very useful vocabulary can be used. For example, also there's another question like what kinds of food do you prefer to eat? So kinds of food. So I like the food my mother prepares. She cooks the food that is very popular in our country. So it is very tasty. So you can use so many words. Okay. So some vocabulary and some phrases also that I have brought up here for you to learn. So you can say, Mike hates cucumbers and tomatoes. He's such a picky eater, you can say. He's very choosy person. Okay, he's a picky eater. He doesn't like all the things that are served to him, and he's very picky and choosy. He's very picky and choosy. So you can refer to that person as a picky eater. Also, you can say some people have a sweet tooth, which means they often have crave for sweet food, sweet meats. Okay, so I like chocolates or cakes, right? So so we can refer to that person as having a sweet tooth. So a person who likes to have sweet. And then I spend a good amount of money on candies to try to satisfy my sweet tooth. So this is how you can use it in the context. So the reason why I kept is for you to understand. Next, you can also use phrases like this, like I'm keen on Italian food, or I'm keen on Indian food. I dislike peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Okay, words like appetizer. Okay, I have to work up to up to an appetite. That kind of, you have to work out. Okay, so and bland, and coarse. These are different words. I just brought all words that really you can use. Bland. So what is this? Bland. Bland means the taste which has very less amount of spices, kind of very mild, spicy food. Having no taste of chili powder or salt or kind of anything. So the dish is very bland. You can say. So you can use many. Okay, cuisine, or a kind of tableware, the utensils or the dishes that you use it for serving. Okay, you can also use expressions like I eat like a horse. That means like you eat a lot. And also you can use expression like foot the bill. Foot the bill. That means anything that you are ready to pay. Okay, ready to pay. Also, you can use a phrase like to grab a bite to eat. To grab a bite to eat. That means like you are in a hurry to finish it up, or to work up an appetite. Okay, to increase your hunger. So you can use all these words, interesting words, in order to speak a good paragraph, or to give a good response to the examiner. Or another question could be like, tell me something about your town. So these are some expected questions that the examiners might ask you. All right, so they might ask you to use, or they might anticipate all these responses from the participants. So that is why it is very important for you to make use of all these words or vocabulary or sentences. Next, and next, coming to the next slide, you can say like something like common tense markers. So you need to be, if you have to speak about the concept, you need to use the tense. And this is the, I think I should say, this is a fundamental what is it, like problem or reason why we are unable to, or many students are unable to speak English confidently. It's just because they cannot make use of the appropriate tense. So they use present for past, they use past for present, they use future for past. So they mix up all these tenses and they speak about, for example, if I say, how was your day? Or it's like by the end of the day, almost like I go home and then like I'm about to go to my bed, and like, how was my day? I say. Or if I have to say, how is your day going to be? I'm talking about tomorrow. And how will it be after a few years? So you have to use future tense. Well, and it was a great day indeed. I'm referring to the past that I experienced. So you will have to understand the time that where, in which context you are speaking, and you have to choose the tense appropriately. Many students are very they are not very mindful when they use these tenses. Okay, so present, when you're talking about the situations in the present, you will have to say now, at this moment, presently. Or I do my homework, or I'll do my homework, or I will have to do my homework, or he does or she does homework, or they do homework. So you have to use all present tense markers. And these days, usually, for example, these days, or generally I come up with, or usually I like to do it. Let's see, right? You have to use all these day-to-day general present tense markers when you communicate, right? So when you're talking about your past, you will have to make use of this past tense markers. In the past, when you were young, okay, or when I was very, in my good olden days, or when you were younger, or when you were a child, or before, did, these are some common past tense markers. When I was very old, or like when I was a child, or when you were like that, or before I dared. So use all past tense markers. And in the future, you say in a few years, or later, or I will, you, I will. These are some common tense markers. When you were young, did you spend more time with your family or with friends? I spent most of my free time with my friends. I spend more time with my family these days. Which of these two is right? So when you were younger, did you spend more time with family or with friends? So you have to choose A, that is like simple past. I spent most of my free time with my friends. You don't say I spend more time with my family these days. You don't say like that. So you have to say I spend more time with my family these days. And next, in the past, did you spend more or less time with your family than you do now? In the past, I spent a lot more time with my family, or I spend almost every weekend with my parents. See, in the past, did you spend? Here, the question is about the past, so you have to choose the past tense. Okay, next. 3. Do you ask your family for help, or you have a problem when you have a problem? So you can say, I always talked with my family when I had a problem, or yes, my parents are always the first people I talk to when I have a problem. Here you have to use or choose simple present tense when you're talking about your day to day conversation or the present condition or the ongoing events that are happening to you. You don't say, I always talked with my family members. You don't say that. So you say, generally, my parents are always the first people to speak. I talk to. It's not that I talked to, but you say, I talk to. So you choose simple present tense. Next, what did you like to eat when you were young? So you say, I will probably eat more vegetables and fewer. Now, I love to eat sweet things like ice cream and candies or cookies. So you love to eat. Basically, you are saying that you love to eat. You don't say, I will probably eat. So it's all about the past tense. So you have to be mindful of the past tense. Next, who usually does the cooking in your house? My mother cooked food for us every day, or my mother cooks most of our meals. My mother cooked, or my mother cooks. My mother cooks, because see, you can identify by looking at the term like usually. So that indicates present action or ongoing situation. So it is not my mother cooked for us every day. So you have to choose this present tense marker. Okay. So next, describe a trip you have taken recently. So, for example, a question like this: describe a trip you have taken recently. And this is a very common question. This is a very common question you can really think about. So, you will have to say, so what do you say when somebody asks you a question like this? Describe a trip you have taken recently. So this is the most common question. This is the most common question to go for any competitive exam that I have seen many examiners asking this question. So how do you have to say? You have to say, you should say where you went. Okay. Who went with you? Why you went there? Where, who, why? And explain what you enjoyed most about this trip. So you have to come up with all these things. So you have to introduce the main idea. And so that will help you organize your thoughts and will help the examiner follow your advice. So you have to say, introduce the main idea to your talk using keywords from the first sentence. And so the tip could be talk a lot and talk spontaneously. And then next, if they ask you, next question, talk about a holiday you enjoy celebrating. So what do you have to say? You should say what the name of the holiday is and why the people celebrate it. If they are asking about a holiday you enjoy celebrating, who usually celebrate it with, and what you usually do on this holiday. So you have to be very specifically and very strategic and very organized when you talk about it, right? So next, describe a time you looked at the sky, for example, day or night, right? Describe an indoor activity or game. Describe your experience of learning a new language. Describe a practical skill you have learned. Describe an activity you do when you are on your own. So these are some questions that could be asked. So you have to be mindful of the vocabulary you are using. For example, describe a time you looked at the sky. So for that question, you can use words like stargazing, astronomy, telescope, cloud gazing, stargazing, the way like you gaze, you have a look at the stars. So you can use all this interesting vocabulary. And also activity, if you have to talk about it. If you are talking about the activity that is very popular, you can say it's hugely popular. It's all the rage. It's really trendy now. It tends to be popular with. So you can use all these phrases. It's hugely popular game. It's all the rage. It's really trendy now. That means it is. I know it is in the fashion now. You're trying to say it tends to be popular with. It's not the most popular or useful thing. So you can use all these things. Okay, and like you can talk about any language or a game you like it. You can also say yes, that's not very hugely popular. And also you can use some adjectives like, yes, and patience is needed, persistence is needed, dedication is very important. So you can make use of all these nouns and adjectives also, right? You can say how. So how did you achieve that? You need to be very patient, you need to be very persistent, you need to be very dedicated. Okay, and it is very challenging, and it's not for everyone. Okay, so challenges are there, but it's not for everyone. Also, you can use expressions like it takes a while to pick it up. Okay, it's a pace. It takes a while to pick it up. It takes some time. It's a piece of cake. A door. For example, it's a piece of cake. That means it is very easy. There's nothing to it. You can use these expressions when you are talking about any language or any activity or anything that you are describing. And if you are talking about any activity, you can say like the tricky thing is or the difficult thing is. Also, you can say the biggest challenge or obstacle or hurdle with this or challenges. So it poses a few challenges. So all these things can be used. It's challenging, but it's worth it. Okay. And if you have to describe your experience of learning a new language, so you can say, after leaving the university, I went on holiday to Spain. For example, if you're describing anything like your experience, and this is just, the IELTS question, for example, and these are some remedies that you can really prepare for. And you can say, I went on a holiday and fell in love with the language, and it is a trendy language, and I went to learn that language. Okay, so just I just want you to go through this for a minute so that you can understand. See the words which I highlighted. It's not the easiest language in the world. Okay, you can say but I wanted to give it a go. That means you want to give a try. And audio recording and set to it. That means like you begin with it. And also signed for some face-to-face. That means we are going to start. And every day I would read, listen, write lots. Okay, I started to pick it up. Okay, start to do it. Okay, you need patience and persistence. All these can be used. Also, for me, one of the trickiest things, biggest hurdle. So all this can be used. So for me, it's been a great experience, and it turned out to be, eventually, it's really useful. So that is the point. These are some strategies, and these are some methods of speaking, or these are some useful tips for you to gain confidence and by overcoming fears. Okay, by overcoming fears, you can really establish or you can really gain success. So gaining confidence and overcoming fears through speaking skills. So this is all about this part 1. So in the next session or in the next class, I'll come up with some more useful strategies, and that session is named as like part 2, again, gaining confidence and overcoming fears through speaking skills. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.